My body different. I'm breathing different. You understand what I'm saying?
Get shot every day, B. You be out. You talking in here living off my mom's? You getting high in front of Sonny, man? Don't come back no more.
What if one of the most legendary street movies ever almost slipped under the radar when it first dropped? Sounds wild, right? Paid in Full is one of those films that didn't make huge noise at release, but as the years rolled on, it slowly turned into a true cult classic that people still talk about today.
Walk up to the table. Ain't got no soy sauce up there, B?
No, they ain't put no soy sauce in the bag.
The movie pulls inspiration from the real lives of three powerful Harlem figures from the 1980s, Alpo Martinez, Azie aka Azie Faison, and Rich Porter.
You deaf, man. I said we ain't got.
Their stories were full of fast money, loyalty, and shocking twists that still have people debating what really went down back then.
Man come out the room and put the gun to my forehead, and I watched him pull the trigger. And my spirit left the body, bro.
Most viewers tend to lock in on Alpo, the character who inspired Rico in the film. His flashy personality and unpredictable moves grabbed a lot of attention, but the truth is, the stories of the other two men are just as intense and just as important to the bigger picture.
Sorry about that, all right? Sorry about that, man.
Azie Faison went through an extremely violent attack and survived unbelievable injuries, eventually becoming the only one of the trio still around years later. In a twist nobody expected, he even helped produce Paid in Full, turning painful history into a film that the culture would never forget. Then there's Rich Porter, the man who inspired the character Mitch. His story is packed with loyalty, ambition, and a betrayal that would eventually bring everything crashing down.
Rich Porter's 12-year-old little brother gets killed.
Yes, sir.
So it's just one horrible event after.
To really understand the rise and drama behind it all, you have to start with Rich himself. Born Richard Thomas Porter in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City, Rich grew up as the oldest of three kids raised by his mother, Velma Porter. He shared the home with his younger sister, Patricia, and his younger brother, William Donald Porter, forming a tight family bond in the middle of a rough environment.
Wanted how much? Like $500,000 or something?
Yeah, that's what it was stated to that band.
And then to show that they were serious, they actually cut off his little brother's
Very
finger.
next day.
Rich stepped into the street economy incredibly young, around just 12 years old. Harlem during the 1980s was buzzing with hustlers and ambitious young entrepreneurs, and Rich quickly built a reputation as one of the sharpest and most respected young players in the area.
He left it in a McDonald's on Broadway in 125th Street and called his house and said there's something to go look, and he sent somebody over there, and that's what they came back with.
In the early days, it was mostly Rich and his close friend Azie Faison making moves and building their name around the neighborhood. They were focused, ambitious, and determined to turn small opportunities into something much bigger. Eventually, another name entered the circle, Alpo Martinez. Many people from that era believe Rich was the one who vouched for Alpo and helped bring him into the crew, a decision that would later become one of the most talked about turning points in Harlem street history.
Asking him like, yo, Rich, where did you get that coke from, man? That's good, because I wanted to make him comfortable. That good. He's like, I got it from my connect. So yeah.
By the height of his run, Rich Porter had turned into a true street legend. People talked about his flashy lifestyle non-stop, designer outfits every single day, stories that he rarely wore the same fit twice, and a lineup of luxury cars parked away in a Manhattan garage like trophies. He was young, wealthy, and moving at full speed.
From there, I knew he was lying. I turned to my little man. I gave him the nod. Once I gave him the nod, my little man spent, because he was short so he could stand up in the van. Next thing you heard was the two guns.
But behind the stylish image in the spotlight was a world filled with pressure, risky decisions, and the constant possibility that loyalty could flip at any moment. Then, in December of 1989, everything suddenly took a dark and emotional turn. On what seemed like a normal day heading to school in Harlem, Rich's 12-year-old brother, William, became part of a situation that would shake the entire community.
You heard that out of his mouth. Your own uncle killed his own 12-year-old nephew.
Then things took a shocking turn that nobody in Harlem was ready for. Not long after William disappeared, contact was finally made. The people behind it demanded a massive $500,000 in ransom money. Later, that number dropped to $350,000 after a series of chilling phone calls, handwritten notes, and even a recorded message from William himself.
My body different. I'm breathing different. You understand?
The first messages came in on December 5th and 6th. One of the most disturbing clues showed up inside a restaurant bathroom. Sitting in a coffee cup was a cassette tape along with a finger. On the tape, the young boy could be heard crying, saying, "They cut my finger off. The cup. Please help. I love you, Mommy."
3 people. My sister's boyfriend at the time, he set me up. You understand?
The moment sent shockwaves through the entire city, and for Rich, it hit painfully close to home.
While Rich was scrambling to figure out how to save his little brother, another storm was quietly building around him. On January 3rd, 1990, Rich agreed to meet with Alpo Martinez.
And it was an incident where he wanted me to give, before he got locked up, he had wanted me to give some drugs to Rich. And I did.
By that time, Alpo had reportedly become extremely suspicious and tense about what was happening around him. He believed Rich might have been holding back a powerful supplier and giving him lower quality product instead.
I gave it back to my sister, and I told him to give it back to him because I felt that dude was crazy, because the situation at that time, he was running from somebody.
Despite the years they worked together, the loyalty they once shared, and the huge money they had made, doubt had started to take over Alpo's thinking. Years later, in his own confession, Alpo explained that he arranged the meeting to confront Rich directly. Rich stepped into a van with him, not realizing the situation was about to spiral into something serious. As they drove, Alpo tried to keep the conversation casual.
Just get shot every day, B. You be You tough, right?
As I was pulling off, I was asking him, "Yo, Rich, where did you get that coke from? That ish was good." Alpo later recounted, saying he wanted Rich to feel comfortable during the conversation. Moments later, the situation suddenly turned violent inside the vehicle. In a later interview, Alpo admitted, "I was very mad. I just harmed a dude that I loved, a dude I called my brother." The next day, January 4th, 1990, Rich Porter was found near Orchard Beach in the Bronx. Even with everything that had happened, authorities discovered more than $2,000 in cash still on him.
Alpo liked good things, nice things, but wow, get a motorcycle, buy a brand new bike with a crowd as that, do wheelies, crash it, and the next day go.
The situation shook people deeply because it involved someone Rich had once trusted and brought into his circle. But the heartbreak surrounding the Porter family was far from over. William, the young brother Rich had been desperately trying to rescue, was still missing during all of this. Nearly a month later, on January 28, 1990, his remains were discovered near a bike path in the Bronx by a man collecting cans. The location was only about a mile from where Rich had been found, adding another painful layer to the story. What stunned people even more was the discovery of who had been behind the plan involving William. Investigators later revealed that it wasn't an outsider at all, but someone connected to the family. The person responsible turned out to be his uncle, Johnny Apple Porter, the brother of their mother, Velma.
Thousands of dollars, 10,000, and just come uptown and light it up, but he liked it, that attention. And in the game, we don't need that. So I was always,
Now let's talk about Azie, or Azie Faison, the man who inspired the character Ace in Paid in Full. Known as the quiet strategist of the group, Faison wasn't the loudest person in the room, but his moves carried serious weight. Out of the 3 major figures connected to this story, he's the one who eventually stepped away from the street life with his life still intact, though the journey left deep marks along the way. Faison was born on November 10, 1964 in New York City. He was one of 7 children raised by Margaret Rogers and Azie Faison Sr. His early childhood started in the Bronx, but when he was just 6 years old, a fire destroyed their apartment building. The family had to stay in a shelter for about 6 months before eventually relocating to Harlem, settling in the historic Sugar Hill neighborhood.
Alpo Martinez was an individual that just loved the limelight, and that was what caused a lot of issues.
Me and Rich wanted to stay as low off the radar as much as possible. But for some reason, he couldn't understand that, man.
Growing up in tough city conditions wasn't easy. Like many young people around him, Faison struggled in school and eventually dropped out after the 9th grade so he could support himself. He worked different small jobs to get by, including spending 2 years working at a neighborhood dry cleaner in Harlem. Then in 1983, something happened that completely shifted his mindset. After watching the legendary film Scarface, Faison became fascinated by the idea of fast money and power. That same year, chance introduced him to a Dominican supplier who regularly visited the dry cleaners where he worked. That connection quietly opened a whole new world. By the time he turned 21, Faison had already built a serious operation in Harlem. Reports from that time suggested he was bringing in as much as $40,000 a week. His network expanded quickly as demand grew during the intense street economy of the 1980s. Around that time, Faison reconnected with his childhood friend, Rich Porter, who had recently returned home after serving time. Rich didn't come alone either. He introduced another ambitious figure named Alpo Martinez. Before long, the three formed a powerful partnership that would become one of the most talked about distribution networks in New York during that era.
Each person brought something different to the table. Faison had strong supplier connections, Rich had natural charisma and influence, and Alpo carried a bold street presence that made people pay attention. Together, they controlled a huge portion of Harlem's underground trade throughout the mid to late 1980s. But by 1987, serious problems started creeping in. On August 21st of that year, Faison was caught in a violent robbery attempt that nearly changed everything. The incident happened at his aunt's home on 1295 Grand Concourse in the Morrisania section of the Bronx, a place that also doubled as one of his stash locations. In the early morning hours, everything suddenly exploded into chaos. The house was stormed in a violent robbery attempt that shocked everyone inside. When it was over, 3 people had lost their lives, and 3 others were badly injured. Azie Faison himself was hit 9 different times during the attack, yet somehow he survived against all odds. Years later, Faison shared that the setup came from someone he actually knew, Kevin, who was dating his sister at the time. According to Faison, the tension between them had been building long before the incident ever happened. The issue reportedly started with a situation from earlier days, before Faison was deeply involved in the street trade. Kevin had once tried to use him as a middleman to move drugs over to Rich, but something about the situation didn't feel right to Faison. Instead of going along with the plan, he decided to back away from it. He handed the drugs back to his sister and told her to return them to Kevin. That moment may have quietly planted resentment that would later explode into something far more serious. The attack became a major turning point in Faison's life. While he was recovering, the entire operation around him started falling apart. Trust between people began to fade, and the once powerful partnership between Azie, Rich, and Alpo slowly started breaking down. Then things got even heavier. In early 1990, Rich Porter's life came to a sudden end, followed not long after by the heartbreaking discovery involving Rich's young brother and the betrayal behind it. The back-to-back tragedies shook the entire circle. For Faison, that was the final line. He made the decision to completely walk away from the street life and never return. After leaving that world behind, Faison shifted his focus toward helping younger people avoid the same path he once followed. In 1989, he helped form a rap group called Mob Style. What started as street storytelling slowly turned into conscious hip-hop aimed at speaking directly to the youth. The group released an album in 1991, and Faison even dropped a solo project. But music alone wasn't enough for him. He understood the power of real stories, so he started working on bringing his experiences to the screen. Faison later became one of the key forces behind the film Paid in Full. He also teamed up with well-known street documentarian Troy Reed to create the documentary Game Over, giving an unfiltered look at his past and the lessons that came from it. Alongside writer and activist A.T. Himba, he also co-authored the book Game Over, The Rise and Transformation of a Harlem Hustler, released in 2007. That same year, the story was discussed at the Harlem Book Fair, where Faison's journey was highlighted as a powerful example of change and the importance of guiding the next generation in a better direction.
The event even featured co-author Azie Himba alongside Congressman Charles Rangel, and the discussion was broadcast live on C-SPAN's Book TV. It was a powerful moment that showed how a story that once lived only in the streets had now reached the national stage. Now we get to the most controversial figure tied to this entire story, Alpo Martinez, the man who inspired the character Rico in Paid in Full. His name still sparks debate whenever people talk about Harlem in the 1980s. Born Alberto Martinez, Alpo grew up in a Puerto Rican household in East Harlem. From a young age, he spoke both English and Spanish fluently, a skill that later helped him move easily between different circles in the city. As a kid, Alpo had a huge personality. He was known for his slick talk, loud laugh, and the kind of confidence that could pull people in almost instantly. Friends from the neighborhood often described him as someone who always had a plan and always knew how to hustle his way into new opportunities. Even before street life fully pulled him in, Alpo already showed signs of being a natural-born hustler. During his childhood summers, he left Harlem to take part in the Fresh Air Fund program, a nonprofit that paired kids from the city with suburban families so they could experience a different environment for a few weeks. During those summers, he stayed with a white family and saw a completely different lifestyle. Things were calmer, quieter, and far removed from the pressure of the streets he knew back home. But once summer ended, he always returned to Harlem, and Harlem itself was changing fast. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, the neighborhood was facing a growing drug crisis that was reshaping the streets and the opportunities around them. Luxury cars started appearing on corners, gold chains became symbols of success, and young dealers were quickly gaining attention across the neighborhood. Watching all of this unfold, a young Alpo began setting his sights on something bigger. For him, it wasn't just about money, it was about status, reputation, and the kind of power that made people pay attention whenever you walked into a room. In the beginning, Alpo started small. He made his early money by robbing drug dealers and hustlers, taking cash and jewelry wherever he could find it. But after a while, that lifestyle started to feel unstable. Running from spot to spot and constantly watching your back wasn't the kind of power he wanted. Alpo wanted something bigger. He didn't want to be known as the guy taken from others. He wanted to be the one running the supply, the man everyone had to come to. By 1983, his name was already buzzing around the streets. People knew who Alpo was, and his fearless attitude made him stand out in a big way. That kind of bold energy made him both respected and extremely risky to deal with. Authorities started noticing him too, and so did people competing in the same world. That same year, he picked up his first serious charge, but it barely slowed him down. If anything, it pushed him to move even harder. Then came 1985, a year that would completely change his path. While serving a one-year sentence for a weapons charge, Alpo crossed paths with someone who would shape his future, Rich Porter. The two connected quickly while locked up, and when Alpo returned home, he was ready to take things to the next level. That's when Rich introduced him to Azie Faison, a man who already had serious connections.
At first, Faison didn't fully trust Alpo. His unpredictable nature and intense personality raised a few red flags. But Rich stood behind him and vouched for him strongly. In that world, a solid cosign carries serious weight. Faison decided to give him a chance, and Alpo wasted no time proving himself. He quickly stepped into the role of muscle and enforcer for the operation. Whenever problems popped up, Alpo was the one handling them. If rival crews started pushing into our territory or someone tried targeting our stash spots, Alpo made sure the message was understood loud and clear. And it wasn't just a job for him. He actually thrived in that role. He carried a fearless reputation and didn't hesitate when things got intense, seeing it all as part of how business worked in that environment. As the operation expanded, Faison started spreading things out across different parts of Harlem. He ran activity around 135th Street and offered Alpo a major opportunity, control over the 145th Street area. Alpo accepted immediately and turned that zone into his stronghold. By the mid-1980s, he had fully built a reputation as one of the most talked about figures connected to the New York street economy. He was no longer the young hustler trying to find his way. Now he was operating at a much higher level alongside his partners, with money flowing in at a staggering pace. Reports from that time suggested Alpo and the crew were each bringing in somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 every single week. But for Alpo, the money was only part of the story. What he really wanted was the spotlight, the recognition, and the kind of reputation that made his name echo through the streets of Harlem. Unlike many others in that world who stayed low-key, Alpo leaned fully into the spotlight. His flashy personality made him impossible to ignore. He showed off designer outfits, drove luxury cars through the neighborhood, and even rode customized motorcycles that turned heads everywhere you went. Stories spread all over Harlem about his wild stunts. People talked about him flying through the streets on dirt bikes, pulling risky moves and daring anyone to try and stop him. Those bold antics helped build his legend in the streets, but that same hunger for attention would eventually create serious problems. His high-profile lifestyle started attracting heavy attention from authorities and also created tension within his own circle.
What once looked like a strong partnership between him, Rich Porter, and Azie Faison slowly started cracking under pressure.
By the late 1980s, the trust between them had begun to fade. A relationship once built on loyalty and huge money was now clouded by suspicion and growing personal conflicts. Eventually, that mistrust pushed things toward a devastating decision that changed everything. After Rich was gone and the pressure in Harlem kept rising, Alpo made a major move that would shift his entire path. He headed south to Washington, D.C., looking to expand his operation in a new environment. Once there, he quickly planted himself deep inside the city's street economy and began building another powerful network. But his approach reportedly became even more intense. He grew more cautious, more suspicious of everyone around him, and far more aggressive in how he handled threats to his operation. Before long, his reputation in D.C. became widely known. Stories followed him everywhere, rumors about intimidation, dangerous confrontations, and people who crossed paths with him in serious ways. Authorities were paying close attention too. For years, investigators across several states had been quietly building a case, trying to connect the dots between different incidents and the growing operation tied to his name. Even as investigators close in, the rumors around Alpo kept growing louder. Stories on the streets painted him as someone who had crossed countless lines in pursuit of power. Exactly how many violent incidents were connected to his name has never been fully confirmed, but one thing was becoming clear. His run at the top wasn't going to last forever. Then came November 7th, 1991, a day already shocking the nation after Magic Johnson revealed his HIV diagnosis. That same day, the walls finally closed in on Alpo. After a long investigation and an intense manhunt, federal agents captured him in southeast Washington, D.C. The arrest sent waves through the East Coast street world. A man who once moved through neighborhoods like a celebrity was now facing a long list of serious federal charges connected to drugs and organized crime. But Alpo wasn't ready to fade away quietly. Facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison, he made a move that shocked many people who knew his story. He decided to cooperate with federal authorities and became an informant. Alpo began giving detailed information about major operations, explaining how different networks worked, and testifying against several people he had once worked alongside. His cooperation helped investigators close multiple cases. In exchange, the government offered him a deal. Instead of life behind bars, he received a 35-year sentence. After serving around 24 years, he was released in 2015 and placed into the Federal Witness Protection Program under a new identity. For a while, it looked like he might live quietly, but the streets he once dominated were never far from his story. Eventually, Alpo returned to Harlem despite the many unresolved conflicts tied to his past. Then, on October 31st, 2021, Halloween night, his long and controversial chapter finally came to an end during a violent incident near Frederick Douglass Boulevard in Harlem while he was sitting in his Dodge Ram Trump.